Hello, this is Simone. Today I want to share and take you along with me while I'm swatching my currently inked pens. I have recently purchased a glass dip pen from Amazon, and I will link it in the description box below. I wasn't sure that was the right decision to do because I have heard from several of my friends that these dip pens were super scratchy and wouldn't write well. But I got lucky. Mine is buttery smooth. It can write a long time without having to be re-inked. It is fascinating to think about the fact that a glass that has this spiral can actually hold ink and you can write with it for a while. Um, the reason why I'm swatching these inks and why I'm playing with them in the first place was the fact that I have started to enjoy writing with colorful inks in my fountain pens. If you have been following me for a while, then you know that so first of all, I have been using fountain pens since I was in second grade. I grew up in Germany, and in Germany, when I was still in school, and I think that is still the case, um, you start learning using a fountain pen after you started writing with a pencil in first grade and then in second grade, where I grew up. That it was common that you were introduced to fountain pens and that you learned to write with fountain pens. And for a long time, it was also expected and the only thing allowed to use in tests, for instance. So I do know how to use fountain pens. I have been using fountain pens forever. I usually re-inked my pens with a syringe, and I didn't use converters. I just used empty cartridges that I refilled with regular blue ink, because in Germany you have something that is called a um, that removes the ink if you write wrong something wrong. You can use that pen. It is white and it removes the ink, and then you can write over it with a fine felt tip pen. That works really well. So um, I was super curious to try out that dip pen and decided I would use different papers. And I actually put them all into a traveler's notebook. The size of the notebook is personal size. I have one that is from Taroku Shop. That is the one that is on the left side underneath. Then I had received some Cosmo Airlight paper from a friend. She commented on one of my YouTube videos and said she would send me some because I wanted to try the paper and see how it feels. And then I also had, this is actually a B6 Slim notebook, the one with the rose gold clip on top, MD notebook. And I just wanted to know how the inks looked on each of the papers, if there was a difference in the way the colors would look, if they were sheening inks, or how much ink the pens would put onto the paper. And I realized while I was doing the swatching that my fountain pens are definitely curated for Tomoe River paper. And it was very interesting to see how they performed on the MD paper. I feel that was the worst writing experience. It was okay, but the ink flow is much nicer on the Tomoe River paper as well as the Cosmo Airlight paper. If you use any of those papers with fountain pens, please let me know what kind of papers you have tried and how you experience writing on the papers with them. It feels very scientific, but it on the one hand, but I really love testing these things and experiencing these things and coming to different conclusions. So, as I said, I realized while I was doing the swatches that my pens, especially the nib choices, I use mostly F nibs, and I have one with an EF nib. It's a Twisby. They work really well and they glide smoothly over the paper, over the Tomoe River paper, but they don't glide smoothly over the MD paper. So if I was just using MD paper, I probably wouldn't choose the same nibs. And you can see how easily and how nice the ink lays down with the glass dip pen. That is definitely a broader nib and is such a nice writing experience. I'm really intrigued to try broader nibs now, especially the EF nib. If I had a different experience with ink before I purchased the EF nib, I probably wouldn't have purchased that. It works, but it is too thin for me. So I'm usually I'm trying to put the ink into that pen that is the wettest, so that it still lays down quite a bit of ink when I write with it. So the MD paper is not as, or writing with my fountain pens on the MD paper is not as smooth. The Cosmo Airlight paper is definitely something you need to get used to. I described it to a friend like wading through mud. It feels really strange, but I have tested. I actually changed my inks out. That was just a writing example of the inks that I had in the pens at that moment. And then I just recently received one more pen and I changed up the inks because I also purchased inks. And the reason why I made these samples was to decide which inks I was going to purchase from the inks that I had as samples. And you will see that on Sunday. So stay tuned and come back on Sunday to see what inks I purchased and what new fountain pen I got. So I was actually, let me finish talking about Cosmo Airlight paper before I move on to the topic that is kind of the subtopic for this video. The Cosmo Airlight paper really shows the inks very nicely. So the inks look a lot darker, but they look very rich. And if there is some kind of sheening tendency in an ink, you will definitely see it on the Cosmo Airlight paper. It feels like you have to drag the pen over the paper. It doesn't glide as smoothly over like it usually glides over Tomoe River paper. I feel that any fountain pen, if it has a great ink in it, will glide on Tomoe River paper. With this one, yeah, the Cosmo Air Light is definitely something you need to get used to, as I said before, and you also definitely need to like the way pens write on there. I have tested or made another palette, and I do actually like it better the more I use it. So maybe I will get a Cosmo Airlight paper notebook at some point, or maybe not. I'm not sure. I do still have so many notebooks in my stash that I want to use up before I buy new stuff. So I'm not sure that they still exist when I can actually move on to new inserts or notebooks. What I wanted to tell you is something that I have recently talked to about my son in a different setting, but it actually applies to many of the things that we see here. Most of the pens, or all of the pens that I own, not most of the pens, all of the pens that I own and use and like are beginner fountain pens. I have Lamy Safaris, and I have TWSBI Echoes. They are all in the beginner price range. They work very reliably. I don't know, and I never have experienced anything bad with them when I use the correct inks. So I dabbled in Noodler's inks for a tiny bit, and that definitely wasn't the right choice of ink for any of the pens that I own. The fountain pens, the paper, the ink bled through the paper. The pens would lay down a ton of ink, and that is the reason why I went down to F and EF nibs with my TWSBIs, because they would just splotch so much ink on the paper. Interestingly enough, with other inks, they don't do that at all. So definitely keep trying the right ink or inks, more than just one single ink, when you test out pens and when you test out inks and papers, and see how they work with each other before you decide that some pen or some ink isn't, or some paper isn't for you. But I really want to stress that you do not have to move on to a more expensive pen if you're really happy with what you have at the moment. I am eyeing pens that are in the higher price range. I plan on going to the San Francisco Pen Show in August and maybe testing those. But at the moment, I am perfectly happy with what I have. And if that is staying that way for the next 10, 15, 20 years, for the rest of my life, it's totally fine. I don't have to own higher pens, or I don't have to upgrade, and you don't either, if what you have and what you own works perfectly well, just because everybody else in the community does that. That is, my son recently purchased a skateboard, and he wasn't sure what he wanted to get and what it needed to do for him, and so we told the salesperson at the skate shop what he was going to plan on doing, and so he just got a standard beginner skateboard, and it actually a longboard type of skateboard, but nothing too expensive. It works really well, and if he ever dives in much deeper, then of course he can upgrade. He can get better wheels, better tracks, better something. But for now, it works for him. And if it will work for him for the rest of his life, it's still valid to own a skateboard and to skate. And it is still valid for all of us, for you, for me, to own beginner fountain pens and be perfectly happy until the rest of our life. I just wanted to put that out there because I feel sometimes the pressure is there, even though we don't really realize that it is there. But if everybody around us gets better pens, and even more pens, then sometimes you feel like you have to step up your game as well. No, we don't. We can be perfectly happy and communicate with people who have better pens than we do, and still enjoy what we have, if that makes any sense. Here I was testing the ink and was checking how long it would take for the glass tip pen to run out, and I was so surprised at how long it was able to write. So that really helped me in making purchase decisions for the inks. I can't wait to be back on Sunday and share with you what I got. Until then, let me know all about your fountain pen experience in the comments below. See you soon. Bye.